Bryan Fischer here for D1 Ticker, and welcome into another edition of AD Search Insights. We're talking about Bowling Green after the school made a move for the first time since 2016. They will have a new AD after Bob Moosbrugger was shown the door. Joining us to discuss all that is Dave Briggs, the columnist at the Toledo Blade. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Bryan. Thank you.
Well, exciting times, I guess you could say, interesting times at least around Bowling Green. Let's go back maybe a month or so ago. I know there were a number of reports surrounding what Bob taking some other jobs. How long has Bowling Green kind of been thinking about making a change at AD?
Well, from my understanding, late in the spring or at some point in the spring, Bowling Green president Rodney Rogers, told Bob Moosbrugger, as you mentioned, the AD Bowling Green since 2016, that the university had decided to move on. They preferred that Bob would ideally get another job, both for the sake of appearances. He's a well-liked alum, and to mitigate the costs. If Bob is fired, as he was, without another job lined up, Bowling Green owes him 6 months of pay. Not a lot, but at a school like Bowling Green, we're kind of, counting every penny under the couch cushions. It was something they were hoping to avoid. So, Bob Moosbrugger was associated with some jobs, certainly talked to the University of Washington about becoming one of the top deputies there. I understand there were some other jobs that for whatever reason did not work out, whether on his end or the other end. And so Bowling Green gave Moosbrugger a grace period. And once, there was no job lined up, and as we were approaching the school year, actually on the first week of the school year, the Bowling Green president decided to finally pull the plug and go a different direction. And I think they need to have an AD in place by the end of the football season. There could be, not suggesting there will be, but there could be a decision that's made on the football program with the football leadership, and you just have to have your long-term leader in place to do that. So that's kind of the timeline.
I do want to dive in terms of the football program in just a second, but I'm kind of curious if you do kind of pull back out from that 30,000-foot view. How would you kind of sum up his tenure at Bowling Green since 2016?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. Bowling Green did really well in a lot of the non-revenue sports, and Bob made some very good coaching hires, soccer programs, the softball, just trying to think. But, again, I don't think any AD keeps or loses their job based on success in the non-revenue sports. It's just a reality. When you look at the high-profile sports, football, one of my theories is, if you're a nice guy and your football program is doing well, you can pretty much survive anything. You can just survive anything. And, Bob had the nice guy part down, very well liked by everybody. Even his critics will tell you he's a good guy who cared deeply for Bowling Green and did prioritize the welfare of student athletes. A good man. But football program, he was kind of in a hole from the start. Not to rehash but he inherited Mike Jinks, former AD Chris Kingston. Hired Mike Jinks and then left, I believe, a month later. And so he inherited Mike Jinks. That tenure was a disaster. Had to ride that out for 3 years. And then once you're finally in a position to hire a new coach, he hires Scott Loeffler. That's Moosbrugger's fourth year. And, the fan base is starting to get a little impatient. But you're at the very ground floor of another football rebuild. So, all along, Scott Loeffler said this was kind of be a 5-year plan, and they would just tear it down, build it from the ground up, kind of the homegrown way. They've added some transfers lately, but long story short, it's been they've stuck to the process, but it's been a long process. Bowling Green's been 7-22 the last 3 years, in Scott Loeffler's first 3 years. Did take some steps forward last year, winning 4 games. I think the expectation is to really contend for a bowl game this year. If not, again, they could be looking for a change. But that's kind of where the football program is. You can argue they're going in the right direction, but it's kind of up in the air. But in the end, he just didn't have the football equity to survive the deficiencies elsewhere. And I think some of the questions were, The men's basketball program has been up and down. Again, that's a hire he inherited, but I should mention he did make a good hire in women's basketball. Robin Freilich hired her from lower levels, and she's been very good. Baseball, Bob is a Bowling Green baseball alum, and he had to cut baseball during the pandemic. They did have the alumni-driven fundraiser to bring it back, and they're basically privately fundraising a Division I baseball program now, and that created a lot of hard feelings. Of course, I think it's really hard for any AD to survive kind of cutting a sport. Just not everybody knew it was necessary. Bowling Green, it's in their financial state. It may have been necessary at the time, but just the feeling it creates with donors and so many people, just kind of the negativity was an issue. So I guess pretty good success in the non-revenue sports, very mixed bag in the high-profile sports, hockey, men's basketball, football. And I think fundraising was something of an issue. I think Bob was known as a fundraiser. He came as the associate deputy AD from San Diego State. That was his specialty. I think he did some good things there. Bowling Green is a very difficult place. I'm in Toledo, where it's a top 100 city, and there are a little more options here. At Bowling Green, there aren't that same corporate support, and you have to do a little bit more to find unique revenue streams. So all in all, it's a long-winded answer, but just kind of a mixed bag. And I think there was a general sense of an athletic department just performing a little bit under its potential, and just time for a lightning bolt of new energy.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit about football there. I mean, this is a place that, has seen coaches win, at a pretty high clip. Urban Meyer, Dave Clawson, Dino Babers, all used the Bowling Green job to land in the Power Five. Are those expectations kind of still there around the program? And does that kind of cloud, I guess, not only the current staff, but also what the future AD is going to have to look at in terms of the program overall?
Sure, absolutely. It's a program with a pretty rich tradition going back to, Don Nalen and Dwight Perry, and as you mentioned, Urban Meyer, Dave Clawson, Dino Babers. This is a program that last won the MAC title as recently as 2013 and 2015, and then it kind of has fallen off a cliff. It's a program. It is up against it in the modern landscape. They do have one of the lowest budgets in the MAC. May have the lowest budget in the MAC. I believe the athletic department as a whole has the lowest budget in the MAC. So you are up against it in that regard. But it's you're centrally located in the MAC. You have a ton of talent within that 3-4 hour radius the coaches talk about, and you can win there. It's just it's a program richer in heritage than money, but there are possibilities.
Wrote on kind of the to-do list for the new AD that comes in. You made a particular emphasis on maybe building up the hockey program. I'm curious why you think that is such a big priority that you think Bowling Green can make in the future.
Yeah, well, I just think it's the one sport historically that Bowling Green has. It's the one sport Bowling Green has won a national championship in. They won in 1984. And they had some powerhouse teams in the 1980s, and as recently as 2019 went to the NCAA tournament. But if you just look at it, they have Hall of Famers on the ice. You think Rob Blake, and Doc Emmerich was a former announcer as a graduate student. You have Hall of Fame coaches with Jerry York and Ron Mason. A lot of tradition. They have good fan support. It's one of the sports that really rallies the students. The bleacher creatures there are pretty lively, and it's just the one sport that Bowling Green can be a player on the national level. Obviously, in football, it's and men's basketball, you're never going to be. You might have a Cinderella run, an NCAA tournament, win a game, and that's awesome, but men's hockey is the one sport where you can really get some bang for your buck. I think probably the highest spending team in the country, program in the country in men's hockey probably spends $5 million. Bowling Green spends $2 million. I just kind of asking, could there be a little more investment? Maybe spend $3.5 million. Would that make a big difference and be worth the payoff? I don't know. I just thought it's interesting to look at. Is it worth trying to stay I don't know, 10 laps behind in the football arms race and keep throwing money at that, or maybe curb the spending other places and throw it at a sport where you can make a big dent nationally, and you're not going to get the same alumni and you're not going to rally the donors in the same way as you would for football and basketball. But if you were to make the Frozen Four or even win the national championship, which is crazily enough not an unrealistic goal at Bowling Green and men's hockey, I think that would be a pretty big payoff too. So, I mean, do you want to just kind of have sparse resources across all your sports, or do you want to go all in one where you can make an impact? So it's at least interesting to think about.
Definite food for thought for the next person that comes in. Now, you're as plugged in with the MAC as pretty much everybody. You understands a lot of these programs. Several of them recently in the last year or two have made new AD hires. Does that kind of put a little bit of pressure on Bowling Green to kind of nail this, knowing what some of their competitors are doing in the conference?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a huge pressure to nail this in any circumstance. You know, it's the athletic department's at something of a crossroads. You know, like I said, you want some new fundraising energy, and you might have decisions in your two highest profile programs. Scott Loeffler's entering the fourth year of a 5-year deal. If the program backslides or doesn't take a step forward this year, I will not be surprised if Bowling Green decides to move on. That'll be one of the first major decisions the new athletic director has to make. And then with men's basketball, you have a decision coming there. The program was one of the worst programs in the country last year. And Michael Huger, another good guy alum, he's had some success at Bowling Green, but program seems to be trending the wrong way. And that's the one program at Bowling Green that has the resources to compete financially. They play in a sparkling new arena. I guess it's 10 plus years old now, but very good facilities. They have a $1 million a year endowment from the late Bill Frack, who was a diehard Bowling Green basketball fan. So that's a pretty unprecedented gift at the mid-major level. On top of the normal budget, they get an extra $1 million to kind of spend how they want on men's basketball. So that lifts them into the 3-4 range in terms of budget in the MAC, whereas in the other sports, they're 11th or last. So it's a sport where there are higher expectations. So if Bowling Green basketball doesn't take a big step forward this year, I believe Michael Huger is they gave him a secret extension during COVID. So I believe he's actually entering his third to last year of his contract. But so that'd be a significant buyout if they bought out the last 2 years, but it would all be mitigated against if he lands a future job. You know the deal. So it would be a lot less. So that's another decision coming for the AD. So yeah, a huge pressure to nail it, no question.
School president Rodney Rogers, as you mentioned, he's an alum. He's been there well over a decade. In terms of the administration, even though he just took over not too long ago. Does that having an alum kind of help the search? Does that hamper the search? What kind of direction do you think the school president is going to go with this?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't have a feel for where they're going. I mean, as an alum, does he want somebody who knows the landscape? Certainly. I guess they went an alum route last time with Bob Moosbrugger, although he had been away for many, many years on the West Coast. I don't know. One of the alums you do hear mentioned is Steve Watson, former Bowling Green alum. He's at Loyola Chicago. Kind of entered the national spotlight there during their Final Four run there. And I guess the big question for a guy like that, very intriguing candidate. What's better, a big time? I wouldn't say big time basketball job, but a good basketball job with a lot of tradition there and some very recent success and a lot of momentum, but without the FBS football program or a program that plays at the top level of college football and has the total package at the FBS level. I think it's interesting. I mean, you look at 2 ADs ago, Greg Christopher. He left Bowling Green for Xavier, and that was a better job for him. He thought it's certainly a better basketball job than Loyola Chicago, but same idea, going to a school that prioritizes basketball. So I don't know. You would probably be better to answer that. What would be considered a bigger job in the athletic director realm? A school like Loyola Chicago or Bowling Green, which probably has a bigger overall athletics budget and football, but doesn't have that one kind of bell cow sport you can hang your hat on. So I think he would be the guy you would go if you're going the alum route. Some other guys have kind of heard them looking at possibly, I think you just look at the guys who were the two finalists at Toledo who didn't get the job. Tom Moreland, one of the top deputies at Purdue, known as a great fundraiser. And then the Gerald Harrison at Austin P. Both Tom and Gerald came up to Toledo to interview for the job. Toledo was fairly high on both of them. Obviously went with Bryan Blair, and Toledo's happy with that choice. But if you're BG, you can't go wrong looking at Toledo would be considered a better job, and they were looked at for a reason. So I think that's something you would probably look at as well.
So in addition to those names that you just kind of tossed out, it seems like fundraising may be the big key attribute that the school is probably looking for.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think there's no question. I mean, you just kind of, as the arms race in all these sports kind of keeps going up, you're just kind of putting more and more fees on the students, and asking for more and more institutional support, and it's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. So, as to kind of stop that train and just continue to invest more in your programs, absolutely, they need somebody who can be a real spark in fundraising, and that's a lot easier said than done. But that's the idea, just to kind of think outside the box, and what ways are there to create new revenue streams.
That's kind of a lot of the budgetary limitations there for the Falcons. I mean, kind of on the doorstep of some certainly big changes regarding Division I and the NCAA itself. Obviously, name, image, and likeness has already kind of come and gone, and we're entering year 2 on that. How comfortable is the university with its athletic department overall, and are they maybe understanding that in addition to making this big hire as an AD, there might be some investments that need to be made to remain not only competitive in the MAC, but remain a true FBS member?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great question, and I think there's a lot of for some of the lower end schools financially in the MAC. I think that's a big question as we kind of embark on this upcoming Division I transformation. What is it going to look like? Are all these schools going to continue to play FBS football forever? I mean, I think there's certainly schools like Toledo and Miami, Ohio. Some of these schools are certainly very committed to it. Buffalo. I think you can question the value at some level, and I'm not saying they will, but I think some schools are going to begin to question why they're spending $9, $10, $11 million on football a year when it's just not the MAC's getting $1 million per school in their TV deal with ESPN, somewhere in that range. You look at the new Big Ten deal. I mean, schools are going to get $1 trillion every year. I mean, I don't know. Does it even make sense to continue trying to play in this same landscape? And I know Power 5 and Group of 5 have always been very different, but just the gap between the haves and the have-mores and the have-nots just keeps growing at an extreme rate. So I think there are going to be big questions. I do think for now, Bowling Green is committed to staying at the FBS level and committing. And I have heard, they do want to invest more in football, but where's the money going to come from? That's the question.
Should make for an interesting search over the next couple of weeks and a couple of months. But Dave, thank you so much for joining us and discussing the opening.
Well, thanks so much, Bryan.